Hello there, Lunar Squadron, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very exciting Star Wars Outlaws video, as we have just received a ton of huge new details about the open world space gameplay and space combat for Star Wars Outlaws, and today we are going to break it all down for you. But first, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you as always, and the way to do that, just go down below this video, hit that little subscribe button, the bell notification right on next to it. It'll notify you every single time that Andreas and I upload. And if you want to keep the conversation going in real time, make sure to hop on over to Twitter and follow us at Lunar Squadron. Now, with all of that out of the way, Andreas, let's get into some space conversation.
Oh yeah, let's do this, guys.
Alright guys, so if you have been following our Star Wars Outlaws coverage up to this point, you will know that one of the things we were most excited to learn more about is the space gameplay in Star Wars Outlaws. It's one of the areas of this game that we had some of the biggest questions for, and Andreas, it seems like this week we got a ton of answers to those questions.
Yeah, we did, Nick, and we have a general sense of how space is going to work in this game. We've seen in the 10-minute gameplay demonstration that you're able to hop in your ship when you're on land, and then you'll be in this kind of on-the-rails or pseudo-on-the-rails experience that'll take you through the atmosphere and into space. And we knew that there would be these orbital regions around each planet, but aside from that and the very brief combat segment that we saw during that gameplay demonstration, which culminated with that jump to hyperspeed to the other orbital region, or the second orbital region that we've seen to date, we didn't really know too much about how space combat would work. And Nick, just like you said, we've got some great clarification here, some really great details about what the boundaries of space are, and I kind of want to start with that. We know, of course, that there are these orbital regions, but what happens when you bump up against the edges of those orbital regions? And Julian Gerighty weighs in here. Of course, the article that we are referring to for all of this information is taken from Game Informer's article titled Taking to the Stars. It's written by Brian Shea, and he's largely weighing in on his experience talking to the various developers involved in this project. And his quote here says, "As Gerighty explains to me, planets and moons have an orbit around them that serves as an explorable area for K while aboard the Trailblazer. Once you reach the edge of an explorable area surrounding the planet or moon, you hyperdrive into orbit of your destination." Nick, this is always something that I want to know whenever I play an open world game. I want to see what happens when I reach the edges, and it looks like we now know what happens when we reach the edges of those orbital regions in space.
Yeah, we sure do, and this just provides some clarity, and it's kind of what we were expecting in terms of the size of the explorable area of this space in this game. We were expecting more of that local space like Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga, and less so just the open vastness of space, say, Starfield. And they actually, in this article, talk about how they didn't want to just make this empty vastness of space. They wanted whatever was available in this game for space to be filled with a bunch of stuff to do. So it looks like we're getting more of that local space area that has boundaries, but still large enough and dense enough that we'll have a lot of stuff to do. And we actually learned some of what we will be able to do in this game thanks to this article. Later on, we hear that we wanted to have an orbit around it with lots of different points of interest, things to do, battles to get in, places to explore. So the orbits for each of the moons or planets that we created had to be populated with lots of different things, and we didn't want to create endless space. So you hyperdrive from the orbit of a planet to the orbit of a planet. So all of the space areas that we have are full of things to do. Andreas, this is incredibly exciting because one thing that really bothered me about the Skywalker Saga was when you were in local space, yeah, there were some things to do, but it did get boring pretty damn quick, and that was one thing that I was hoping that Outlaws was going to avoid, and at least what it sounds like we're going to have a lot of stuff to do. It will be fun. It won't just be the same mindless stuff, and that will just be a nice change of pace for a Star Wars game.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would like not just a lot of things to do, but also a lot of variety. This is something that I particularly didn't like too much about Starfield, and that is when I was flying around, I noticed that those random space encounters started to become very repetitive. and they didn't feel also random anymore. So one challenge that I hope that Massive is going to be overcoming here is accomplishing that variety in space, because it's really easy for space to feel a bit of that monotony when you're going through from point A to point B. And I'm hoping that not only are there a lot of different things to do, that there's actually a variety within those different things to do. And on that note, Nick, we got a quote here about one example of one gameplay loop in space. And the quote here reads, "As the Star Wars Outlaws art and world director arrived in space during his playthrough, he received an emergency signal that a freighter was being attacked. So he hurried to their location to help them fight off the attackers. Finally, he landed on a space station. While he can't go too deep into how big these space stations are, there are things to do, including vendors for trades and, potentially, some side quests." Nick, I feel like he's kind of avoiding some things here, maybe playing coy with some of this information, saying that there might be some side quests, and he can't really talk to how big these space stations are, but I don't know. I can't help but hope that these space stations are more substantial areas and that there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding dramatic here, this sounds like a game-changing feature for this game. Like, this really stood out to me in this article, and it's something that I think should be getting more attention. I mean, there's going to be space stations in this game, Andreas, and not only are there going to be space stations, they're going to be large enough, and well, they won't say how large, but they're going to be large enough that there's going to be vendors on them and potentially side quests. So they're big enough to get out of the Trailblazer and run around and explore, and there's going to be things to do. And I am so excited to see the different types of space stations that will be in this game and the type of life that will be on it and the atmospheres that will be on it. Will it be like an outlaw space station, or will it be an imperial space station? Will we get a bunch of variety when it comes to these space stations? Like, my mind is just spinning. Like, the gears are spinning in my head for the potential for these space stations. Like, this really is a game-changing mechanic for me when it comes to the space gameplay for this game. This is the kind of stuff that I was really hoping for this game, and it's really exciting to have confirmation that some of these features will actually be in this game. It's nice to see dreams turn a little bit into reality here with this game. I'm so excited for this feature.
Yeah, me too, Nick. And I'm also really glad that you brought up variety when it comes to the space stations. One thing that I would love to see is them really committing to the bit when it comes to things like, say, you're pulling up to an Imperial space station. Like, I want to feel that moment of, like, did I steal clearance codes, and are my clearance codes going to check out? And I hope that they pay attention to those nuances in Star Wars that we've seen in the movies, and I hope that stuff translates into the gameplay, because, man, that could really translate to a very cool smuggler experience here. You think, like, when you're being a smuggler or an outlaw in Star Wars, like, you want to be going through security checkpoints, carrying contraband, and having those experiences. Nick, this is something that we've done in No Man's Sky. It's something that we've done in Starfield too. And I hope that they're able to bring something a bit new and fresh into that gameplay loop that we're used to of, like, smuggling contraband through security. And I hope that using Star Wars IP, like, there's so much great stuff there that they really take advantage of all this IP has to give. Like, man, I'm just thinking of the sky's the limit here. Like, we know, for example, like, Death Star 2 is being built during this time. Nick, any chance we get Death Star 2 here? Like, is that even in the realm of possibility, do you think?
There really isn't too many instances in mainstream Star Wars where we visit space stations. Like, that, space stations don't play a massive role in Star Wars outside of, obviously, the Death Star being the most infamous space station, but even that is, like, is that really a space station at that point? It's like a weaponized gigantic moon. Like, calling that a space station, I get it, but, like, we haven't seen some of these lesser, smaller space stations that you see in other space and sci-fi IP. So I think there's a lot of potential here for growth in the Star Wars IP, and it's just something that I feel like we're going to experience something truly new here, and I'm excited to see what Lucasfilm and Massive Entertainment comes up with when it comes to these space stations. Like, I think of stuff out of, like, The Expanse and how there was a ton of variety in that IP with the space stations, and just how different an experience was based off of which station you were on. And I would like to see that translated into Star Wars here with this game. So I'm really excited about that. And the other feature I want to talk about, Andreas, before we get out here, is we also learned about epic scale space battles. The quote here is, "It's fast to travel. You can hyperdrive at any moment, and there's combat, of course, both on an intimate dogfight scale, which we've seen before, but also on an epic scale too. And there's exploration." And again, they reiterate, there's a lot of things to do in space. So, Andreas, we've seen these intimate dogfights between the Trailblazer and TIE fighters, but here we also learn that there is going to be dogfights on an epic scale too. And one of the things we've been hoping for and speculating for is the potential for capital ship battles. And we got kind of a look at it in the story trailer, but it was a cinematic. Are we going to be taking down a Star Destroyer in this game?
I mean, they certainly have been showing Star Destroyers, and I would hope that those wouldn't just appear in cinematics. I think we're all hoping for the same thing here. We've also seen, for example, Kay running around what looks like an Imperial facility. I don't know. I personally think it would be somewhat of a miss if you missed out on that moment of being in space and then having that holy shit moment of a Star Destroyer pulling up on you, jumping out of hyperspace. What a sight that would be to behold. I recall seeing that for the first time in a game like Lego Star Wars. I think this would be such a cool feature to have, and I hope they are able to go the distance with it, maybe even going to the extent of boarding a Star Destroyer. That would be like, I don't know if I'm expecting too much out of this, but at the end of the day, they are delivering what seems to be a AAA open world Star Wars experience, and if they want to be the cream of the crop in that regard, I think they have to hit notes like this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And from a pure gameplay standpoint, they're showing the right things and they're saying the right things, so we can at least be excited about that. Guys, let us know your thoughts on all of this brand new space gameplay information that we learned this week. We're incredibly excited about it, especially the space station thing. What would you like to see out of space stations in this game? I think this is such a unique and cool feature that is being added to this game. So I would like to get your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, if you want to take the conversation off of YouTube, go ahead and join our Discord server. We would love to have you in there. It's a great place to get to know us better and just join in on the conversation with your fellow Star Wars fans. Link to that will be down below in the description. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for us for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.